Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices for Scotland podcast, where we just do this every 2 weeks and speak about what's going on in politics and what's not going on in politics, and giving people a voice as well. Joined by Aaron from Voices for Scotland. How's it going, Aaron?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Busy time as always, but yeah, it's good to be busy.
Yeah. I must admit, before we get into the news and all that, we better say well done to Scotland, because the last time we were building up to the big game and all that. So that was quite exciting, that game.
It was very exciting, very nerve-wracking as well. Typical Scottish fashion of losing a goal in the last minute. But, maybe it's a change of direction and a change of fortunes, because obviously we qualified and we got through that time. So, yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing.
So let's move on to Voices for Scotland, because if people haven't saw, well, I don't know why you haven't saw. Get onto the Twitter feed, because you're very, very busy with events. So let us know what events you've got coming up.
Well, the main event, the big event really is the big indie night in that we've got coming up on the 12th of December. And basically it's a big, massive indie festival to end 2020 and go out with a bang. We've got we've got Elaine C. Smith hosting it. We've got Dougie McLean, Jackie Kay, Jenny Godley, Annie Reader, Leslie Riddick, Val McDermott. The list goes. It's an amazing lineup, and we're really excited to share that night and share that event with everybody. So yeah, more information on that is on our website at voicesforscotland.scot. And you'll get a prompt to go to the page for the big indie night in. But yeah, really exciting event. Really great way to end the year. We've got music, chat, poetry, comedy, everything that you want for a sort of end of year party. And all the money that tickets are £10 for that, which is great value for a day long festival. And all the money that we raise for that goes into our campaign fund, because we've got a lot happening with the campaign. We're launching a new thing called Be a Voice in the next couple of days, which you can go to our website and see more about that as well. But it's about connecting people and people telling their stories about why they support independence. So, and also we're going to be supporting the artists that are involved as well. So we've obviously quite a few big names in there as well, but there's some other artists that have struggled this year because they're not been able to do gigs and stuff like that as well. So a percentage of the money that we bring in from that will go to supporting those artists as well. So that's the big thing. We've also got our usual get-together events. We've got one a week tomorrow on gender balance in Scottish politics. And we've also got one tomorrow night on a very pertinent topic on Scottish borders with Bill Austin, who we're also joined by today.
Yeah, I was going to say, instead of listening to me and you speaking waffle on, well, maybe not you, but I kind of waffle on it quite a lot. But before Alan says it, yeah, I do waffle on, because I know you're dying to say that there, Alan. But without further ado, we're joined by Bill Austin today on the podcast. Hi, Bill.
How you doing?
I'm not bad. Thanks for giving up your time, because I know it's a busy time at the moment.
No dramas. We're looking forward to this.
Yeah. So I'll just hand over to Aaron. Yes.
Yeah. So Bill, you've written a paper for the Scottish Independence Convention on borders, which is part of a series of papers, the transition papers, which outline where an independent Scotland needs to be and highlighting some of the key issues. So maybe I don't know if you could just start off with giving us a bit of an overview of the paper you've written and the sort of key findings from that.
An overview would be, it really sort of falls into four areas where the UK government currently is on borders and the stramash and the burach that they're in. And then to dismantle the hard border pejorative term, because it's a made-up term. It belongs to Project Fear 2. And then from there, move into where a Scottish customs service should look like and what its priority should be. And then finally, the aspirational side, because although on the one hand, people might say, oh my God, that's a lot of change on the horizon for self-government. Well, actually, to have a customs service in Scotland to be saying the top 5 in the world, because there's a lot of help out there to actually make that happen. Why shouldn't we aspire to do that, specifically to raise revenues for our country and our communities, and then politically where our priorities lie? Is it to give corporations big subsidies, or is it to help the disabled and all the other communities that desperately need revenues? It's all about priorities.
Yeah, definitely, and that's actually a point that I picked up on from the paper, and I'll maybe come back to that in a minute or two, because one of the first things I wanted to ask you about actually was about a hard border. Now, this has obviously really dominated the narrative when it comes to Brexit, about a hard border in Northern Ireland. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was where does this, as you sort of phrase it, as a sort of myth about a hard border, where does that come from, and how does the debate in Scotland move away from that? Because with independence, Scotland probably would seek to rejoin the EU and would probably have alignment with the sort of EU standards and policy. So how do we move away from that myth about a hard border and get around that?
Well, if there's people watching this just now and they're into a wee bit of audience participation, invite them to grab their phone and have a quick look at Google in the World Customs Organization, because obviously internationally that's the overarching organization. And World Customs Organization, on the front page of the search box, tap in hard border and tell me what comes up. If anybody finds anything, could they let me know? And then the second one, the one down from that, is the membership rules to join the EU are included in the EU acquis. And these are fairly specific terms laid out by the EU. Same thing, grab your phone, find EU acquis, where you'll get about 14 chapters, mostly on customs, where here are the rules that we would have to comply with. Tap in hard border, let me know what you come up with. So it just completely blows hard borders out the water. Where does hard borders come from? It's an easy MSM term to frighten people. It's an aggressive thing. The way the World Customs Organization and the EU customs organizations set themselves out is to facilitate trade and encourage trade. Clearly, within that, the customs are a law enforcement organization, because whatever law you've got saying you must pay revenue on these goods, well, that's there to be enforced. But what I'm saying is there's ways of going about it. Hard border, or put it another way, you're now the ambassador for Scotland and you're trying to sell us as a country to invest in and trade in. And you're sitting there dressed like an SS general, in black with silver runes, and saying, we've got a hard border. We kind of go about things a different way. I mean, for goodness sake, common sense and logic would tell you that's daft.
Yeah, and it does. Just the term hard border does create quite an emotive sort of mental imagery of checkpoints, and I don't know if anybody's ever visited Berlin and got to Checkpoint Charlie, or thanks to checks in Northern Ireland as well. It is very emotive, and I guess that's the narrative behind what we hear about so much in the Brexit debate.
Yeah, and this is where it gets kind of, how do we shift Scottish opinion? What I would suggest to everybody listening in is, don't think in terms of the wee stretch of land between the Solway and the Tweed. When you have a look at a map of Scotland and a 200-mile circumference to our waters. What you have to do is lift your sights on this from a wee bit of hard border to a legal jurisdiction, which actually is gymongous. And for Scotland to set up a customs service, what are we talking about? Where would you like this hard border? Would you like it in Barra? Would you like it in Unst? Would you like it in the beach at Ballantrae? I mean, this is where it gets kind of daft. So, you know, any customs service, and this is where my own experience in Africa and Eastern Europe comes in. You sit down with a blank piece of A4 and you work out where your revenue strategy is. Your government tells you where you would like to raise cash, and then you hand it across to the customs service, and they carry out risk management analysis, and from that falls out, okay, we've only got 1,000 troops. Where are they actually going to be? Are we going to put 1,000 troops between Solway and Tweed? Again, you know, like even just thinking about it like that, that's daft.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, in the report we talk about smart borders. Can you give us a bit of an explanation of what that actually means?
Yeah, well, rewind to what was suggesting about Scotland's customs legal jurisdiction, which runs from Solway, Tweed, all the way up to Unst, all the way out to our oil fields and what have you. Within that huge area, that we'll call it a customs zone, if you like, because, you know, in terms of smart borders, there's no such thing as a smuggling home run. If a dude gets a 20-foot container's worth of cigarettes from the continent to Edinburgh or Liverpool, it doesn't stop being of interest to the customs. You can still carry out your controls and your law enforcement in a warehouse in Edinburgh or somebody's backyard in Liverpool. The whole country becomes a customs area. Therefore, in terms of smart borders, what it means is that your resources are allocated to where you pick up intelligence, etc., where you can enforce the law. And clearly, what I'm trying to suggest is just because someone crosses a line on the map, the border, doesn't mean to say that they've been successful in getting contraband into the country. That's daft. So what I'm saying is, in terms of smart borders, there would be, there's any amount of smart IT kit now, which can tell you which vehicles, etc., are moving. And within that, your own intelligence systems within Scotland can be very, very effective in screwing up that guy's day, that smuggler's day. What I'm also just suggesting here is that the way the Brits have they destroyed customs and excise. So all the customs stations that Scotland used to have, where folk would walk in and say, well, do you know what? I think there's something naughty going on at the end of the road, or we saw lights off the coast. All of that's gone. Yeah. It would be in Scotland, you know, our community's interest to build up an infrastructure again, and you know, like set ourselves out so that we can feed each other in order to raise revenues and protect the revenues that we need for our communities.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, so much of this, it really sounds like it does come down to intelligence about what's going on, the goods that are coming in and out, and sort of managing that in a sensible or smart way, you know, and that sounds sounds like the way that it should be. And it's really interesting to hear you, just the way that you phrase it and the way that we view that the zoning, if you like, and what the border actually means, and that if somebody does smuggle a container of cigarettes into the country, that you can pick that up in Edinburgh. You know, it's actually stopping it's about managing that and understanding what's happening and where it is. And there's another, and just sort of to follow on from the point that you just made there, about, and something that I picked up again that you'd written about the number of investigators that the DWP has compared to the HMRC. And it's, I suppose, a bit about the emphasis on resources and how we manage the border, and like you're saying, of the interest in that tax revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to political priorities, and again, this is potentially one of the exciting things about setting up a new customs service, because it has to be seen within, okay, how do you want this service to assist the country? And the answer is find the money legally while facilitating legitimate trade. Because again, the whole, if customs guys are seizing things and making arrests, well, largely that's because things have gone wrong. The way it's normally explained is a traffic light system. Green is compliant importers and what have you. Orange is where people are new to the game or that they're not actually very experienced. And then red is the enforcement side. The utopian scenario for a customs guy is everybody's green.
Yeah.
Okay, and that way, and where that comes from is facilitation, education, and being a good guy.
Yeah.
Then you can manage your resources into, okay, well, if we do have red traders, what resources do you want to put in? What size of black economy do you think the country could cope with? Because cash trading and all the rest of it, that's actually really hard to nail. In answer to your question about the DWP, well, that's exactly where our political priorities determine whether you're chasing a guy for his £71 a week ESA because he's cleaning windows for cash.
Mm.
Do we want to chase that guy? Or should we maybe have a look at the corporation who generates ridiculous amounts of wealth in Scotland and then shifts that wealth to a tax haven? Should we be thinking about that? Obviously, what I would suggest is that's where my resources would be going.
No, absolutely. And what strikes me is that this is something that really affects everybody in the country in terms of the tax revenue that we bring in, because that is money spent on hospitals, on infrastructure, on transport, and all the rest of it. But it's something that we can't change in Scotland as it is now. I mean, because these are reserved matters, and the only way that we can make those changes is, first of all, to have independence, but then also to have the public and political will to put in place a system and a structure like you're describing and like you've suggested in your report. Do you feel like there is that political will in that within Scotland as it stands right now, or is there more work that needs to be done in educating and informing people about what needs to change in an independent Scotland?
That's a storming question, and it's storming because I don't know the answer. Given that, for example, Commonweal, clearly their thinking comes in from the left, and therefore they are pro the NHS and all the million other good things that need supporting. And then on the other hand, we've got ScotGov, who, if you look at the SNP's website and look on for revenues or customs and borders, there's a big blank. Mm. The only thing that we've got politically recently was the Growth Commission. And for the life of me, when I went through it, looking at it from a customs point of view, I thought this has been written for big business. And actually, it's contrary to what I'm suggesting, that a community-driven revenue system would aspire to, and that was kind of my final point. Where do we want to be heading to? What is it we want to achieve? Is it to give corporations big subsidies because that makes us good to invest in, or do we want to address the million and one other things? I mean, but you only need to go to Norway and see how swept up they are. They've only got about 1,000 customs people in their customs service, and it's actually fairly swept up. Their communities, they're well established, yada yada. their support networks and all the rest of it. That comes from customs revenues.
Yeah.
But what I'm also saying is, in terms of a national revenue strategy, customs is only one cog in the wheel. There's any amount of taxes and revenues that could be raised, some that are not, like land reform. So what back in the day, if I was to hoist my red flag, I would talk about the redistribution of wealth.
Yeah.
Well, actually, a revenue system set up in Edinburgh, which looks at the redistribution of wealth, wouldn't be a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such an important thing in the context of what we're talking about. But more broadly, in terms of independence in general, is I really feel that we do need to be talking much more about the country we want to be. A lot of the discussion, a lot of the debate is about timing of a referendum and what the polling's like. But there's not, for me, and very much of what we're trying to do with Voice for Scotland is to get people talking about what an independent Scotland actually looks like, how it will function, how it will run. And I feel like the paper that you've written on the borders and everything associated with that is a really important step in setting out that vision. So hopefully it does get people talking about this and other issues a lot more. The other thing I was going to, it's maybe a bit of a step backwards in the conversation, but I think it's always a useful exercise. I find if you look at the systems that you have in place right now, and you think, if I was going to create a similar, if I was going to create something like HMRC or customs or the new borders policy, would I do it the same as it is today? From your experience and from the report you've written, what are the sort of key things that need to change from where we are right now and where we need to be? Okay,
when London talks about regaining control in the hard borders, what they're talking about is being anti-immigration. The UK border force are the guys at ports and airports, but they're 90% focused on immigration, and therefore the revenue side of life, collecting the revenue or establishing the contraband side of life, that's not happening. So with the best will in the world, what do we want? Do we want just to be anti-immigration and xenophobic? I can't remember the exact phrase, the unwelcoming society thing.
Yeah.
Is that what we want? Or do we want Scotland to be a front foot EU member state or EFTA state, where actually we can trade with folk, we welcome freedom of movement and all of these good aspirational things? The way the UK is currently set up is dysfunctional, because just mention the UK BF side of it, that's immigration. There are no customs guys at ports and airports. There hasn't been a customs officer at a port or an airport since 2005. So there's a bit of a fig leaf going on when you hear politicians saying, yeah, customs officers, customs legislation. They're having a laugh. Gordon Brown got rid of customs and excise in 2005. So what we've got is two separate organisations. HM Revenue and Customs, the customs bit, all work inland. They all work at VAT offices or inland revenue offices. There are no customs officers in ports and airports. So where's your hard border now?
I think that'll come as a shock to a lot of people to believe that, because when you come through the airport, do you have anything to declare? It doesn't matter which line you follow. There's nobody there. Is that right?
There hasn't been. I mean, this is the insanity of it. That they've been allowed to get away with it, say, for the last 15 years. But all of these terrible misgovernance, dysfunctional choices that they've made, they're all coming home to roost now, because everybody's, London's saying, well, we've really got to do this customs thing. But this, and amongst that is the hypocrisy of it, in terms of on the 1st of January, there's going to be a non-honesty box system for 6 months. They're just going to wave everything through. Does anybody see a problem with that?
That's well, I was going to say that's crazy and unbelievable, but it's difficult to find things that are unbelievable right now, with just the way that everything's been handled in UK politics for the last few years. So, yeah.
Well, actually, in terms of, like, hold that thought, last week in Glasgow, there was a seizure of 4 million cigarettes, which was about 1.6 million revenue lost to the system in Glasgow last week.
Yeah.
So it's not something that this is Buffalo Bill's big idea for the day. This is happening all the time. Yeah. And the revenue lost to our NHS and to our communities is criminal. Well, who brought this about? The London government. Mm. So what I'm suggesting is we've got a blank piece of A4. We can do this so much better.
I think a really important thing that I'm getting from this is about changing the narrative of what we talk about when we think about borders, and because I think that over the last decade or so, I feel like the right, the xenophobic movements have taken over the narrative of what a border means, and it really is about immigration and being anti-immigration. But I think you put it really succinctly and really importantly there, that actually the border is about a country getting the revenue that is owed, and that money can fund things like the NHS, like teachers, transport, and all the rest of it. And I think that is an argument that has been lost for far too long. So I think that's a really, really important point to bring up.
It is, and actually, I come back to the legal jurisdiction. What I described was a two-dimensional map. See the hard border guy in a Sentry box at Gretna. How does he control your next purchase on Amazon and eBay from Japan or Australia?
Yeah.
How does the hard border fit in with that? Because everybody knows the amount of trading that's taking place in cyberspace is off the scale. So is there revenue there? Of course there is. But so how does that work? We having guard dogs and barbed wire between Solway and Tweed. It's insane.
It really is. It's It's really, really interesting to hear all this, and I feel like even in this half-hour chat that we've had, I've learned so much, and I really hope that everybody listening to this has as well. So, tell us, how can people get hold of this paper that you've written?
Excellent question. I don't know, because what SIC have said is there's going to be a paper a month.
Yeah.
And they haven't said when the paper will be released yet. I'm expecting to hear today or tomorrow.
Okay, well, in that case then, I mean, I know that there was some of the key points were in the National yesterday. But yeah, if anybody listening wants to get a hold of this paper, either look at the SIC social media or look at Voices for Scotland social media, because we will be covering it and tweeting about it as well. Yep. Also, this podcast will probably be going out on Thursday. So tonight, Thursday, Bill will be joining us at Voices for Scotland in a get-together event where we'll probably cover some of the stuff that we've already spoken about, but it's a really great chance for people to ask their questions and get involved in the discussion. So we put under the spotlight again, Bill, I'm afraid, but I think it's really important. I found this so educational and informative, and I think when it comes to campaigning again, when we have a referendum date, whenever that might be, people need to be able to speak about issues like this with confidence, and I really feel like the get together events and give people that confidence and the knowledge. So join us tonight at 6 on Zoom. You can check out our social media for that as well. But Bill, thanks so much for that day. Really, really interesting, really informative. I'll look forward to getting a copy of the paper and going through it in more detail, but thank you so much for today.
You're very welcome.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers.